Welcome to a tutorial where we'll be learning how to add collision boxes into our model. Now, before we do anything else, we need a test subject. So this is our main FPS controller or player, which is obviously tagged as a player. So what we're gonna do is just duplicate that, name it AI, and create a separate tag, call it AI. Also, we're gonna name the layer as AI, and we're gonna change the children as well. So now what we got is a AI player. Make sure to name them properly. And now this is our test subject. So what this test subject has, right, let me make this larger. So what this has is a main collider, which is the character controller collider, which we can see if we turn off, or actually if we minimize that, it disappears. So this is our main collider, which we're gonna need to shrink down. And what I've done is I've added a collider where the head is. So if we go to our FPS body and select the FPS head, we'll see that I've already added a capsule collider. What I'm gonna do is obviously just remove that, and the body has nothing inside it, just a mesh render. So what we're gonna do is select where the skeleton is. So this is the skeleton, this is obviously the spine, and so on and so on, the neck, the shoulders, and what have you. So what we're gonna do is find where the neck or the head is. So what we're gonna do is go down to where the neck is, and we'll see a folder that has the head in it. So the head obviously has some more folders inside it, but all we need is the head folder or the main folder. So the reason why we need that is I'll show you in a minute. First, let's add in a collider. You can obviously do a box collider. You can shrink down the size so it fits the head, but what I'm going to do is add in a capsule collider. I'm going to shrink it down so it fits the head, and now what we got is a capsule collider that wraps around the head of the AI or the player. So the reason why I'm doing this inside of the bones or the folder where the bones are is because this is going to move with the player. So what I mean by that is if I hit play, what we're gonna see in here is if we go to the scene view, we'll see that the collider moves with the player. So that is basically the core of this whole entire video, and obviously we need more colliders. We need the body colliders and the arm colliders. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so here's what we got after some time of aligning these colliders. Here is what the final product looks like. So if we hit play, we're gonna see the actual result. We're gonna see all the colliders working together. Let's remove the weapon. Alright, so now we can see what is actually going on. We'll see that the capsule collider actually respond to where the hand is. And we got all other colliders. So now what we're gonna do is make a script that will allow us to know if the bullet has hit the head or the body or the arms or the legs. So let's do that and ignore this. So in your scripts folder, create a new C# script, name it whatever you want, and inside this script all we need is a enumerator that will allow us to select which body part it is. So let's do that. Let's say public enum collision, and in here we can add whatever we want. So I'll add head, and then I'll add body, and I'll add the arms. So what we got in here is 3 different collision types. And now let's actually initialize this by saying public collision type and damage. Okay, now this will show up in the inspector view. And now what we need is a method to actually deal the damage into the root folder. So the way we're going to do that is by obviously referencing first the controller script. So we're going to say public controller. So to initialize this controller, what we're going to do is just drag and drop everything so into the inspector view. And the very last thing, and the one thing that we need the most, is the actual hit damage. So let's build that. Let's say public void, and I'm just gonna name it hit. Obviously the amount of damage, so I'm gonna name it as an integer. And now inside here what we're gonna use is a actual try catch block, so we don't actually get errors. So I'm gonna do try, and I'm gonna catch the error by printing. So the only one error that we can get from here is the error that the controller is not connected with the take damage script. So we're gonna say in here is that controller is not connected. And in the try block, what we're gonna do is deal the damage that is taken from here into the controller script. So controller script must have a health, which is a float variable. And since this is a float variable, what we're going to do is change this integer value into a float variable, so we don't have to cast from floats into integers. And what we're going to say is controller dot health is minus equal to the value. And we're going to ask if the controller dot health is less than or equal to 0, we want the player to die. So since in here we don't have a die function, what I'm going to do is say controller dot die. And obviously this is going to produce an error, which is okay. So in here what we're going to say is a public void die. And for now what we're going to do is just destroy the game object. So destroy game object. And this is basically the meat of today's tutorial. So if we save that and go back to our AI player, what we're gonna need is to go into each and every collision that we added. So we got one in here, which is the capsule collider. So what we're gonna do is this take damage, drag and drop it inside here. And since this is a arm collider, what we're gonna do is check the damage type as arm and connect the controller. That is all you have to do. So I'm gonna do that for all of the colliders, and I'll be back. Okay, so now each and every collider is connected to the AI controller, or the main controller, that has a health variable. Let's bump that to maybe 500 for now, just so we can test it. And now let's add a function into our weapon that actually deals the damage from the weapon into the health. So let's open the weapon controller, and in the weapon controller the first thing that we're gonna need is a reference to this take damage script. So the way we're gonna use it is by making this reference into a null every time we shoot, and we'll see how that is going to work. So let's say private take damage and name it whatever you want. So the way we're going to use that is, obviously we're not going to initialize it because we're going to have to set it into a null variable every time we shoot. So where we shoot the actual bullet, the very first thing we're going to need is to make that very same variable that we just created, so the take damage variable, into a null variable. So what we're going to do is take damage is equal to null. And just to make our life easier, we're going to cut this, and we're going to say check for hits, and we're going to pass this hit variable. And obviously we don't have this function yet, so let's make it. Let's make our code a little bit more cleaner. So let's make it a private variable, and obviously this is going to take a raycast hit. And let's paste that very same code. So there's times that this code will produce errors. So what we're going to do is the same technique that we did in here. We're going to do a try catch block. So let's say in here try catch. Okay, so inside of the try block, first thing we're gonna do is take this take damage and initialize it to whatever this hit variable has hit. So before we do that, we want to actually instantiate this bullet effect. So this bullet effect will obviously never produce an error. So what we can do is take this out of the try catch, so it always instantiates a bullet effect, and then inside of the try block we're gonna check if this hit contains a take damage script. So the way we're gonna do that is by saying inside the try block take damage is equal to hit dot transform dot get component, obviously the take damage component, and close it with a semicolon. Next thing is to actually deal the damage. So as we build this head and body, actually this is body, not noddy, so body and arms way of damaging the player, we're gonna have to check for that into the weapons controller. So if statement, or actually we can do a switch statement. So switch take damage dot damage type. One thing I forgot is to give the damage amount. So let's add that as a float variable, public float. So we're gonna deal the damage inside the hit. So in the case where the damage type is equal to body, what we want is the damage amount to be less than obviously the head. So what I found in other FPS shooters is that the body amount is basically half of the head amount. So what we're gonna do is the total damage amount, we're gonna decrease that by 2, or split it in half. And if we're dealing the damage to the arms, what we're gonna do is damage amount /4. So we're dealing somewhere between the 25% amount of the total damage, and that's it. What we're gonna do is just save this, and now let's try it. So don't forget to actually give a damage amount. So I'm gonna give 50 damage, and now let's see if we deal any damage to the AI. So the head deals 50 damage, as you can see in the health bar. The body should deal half of that, but as you can see it doesn't work. Some of the body parts are working, but some of them are not working. And the problem with that is if we go to the scene view, we'll see that this outside collider is interfering with the other colliders. The simple fix for that is just make the radius really thin. So this will never interfere with other colliders now. If I hit play and test it one last time, we'll see that we can deal the damage anywhere we shoot. So now let's try to actually kill the player, and it disappears. So that's all about this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.